We are very pleased to have Meg Whitman, who is probably one of the most iconic female business executives in the country, bar none. And she is also very connected to Detroit. She's on the General Motors Company board, and she is also way back in the past. She ran a company called FTD Florists that was based in Farmington Hills. That was before eBay and before HP. We're so pleased to have her live but remote in a conversation with Faye Nelson from the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. We're going to be talking this morning with Meg about her passion for education, education reform, and she chairs the board of Teach for America.
It's a pleasure to be here with you today. Today, I have the distinct pleasure of having a conversation with the most extraordinary woman, Meg Whitman, board member, General Motors, and Procter & Gamble. So a bit more about the background of Meg. Her career has included executive roles at leading American brands from Hasbro Toys and Stride Rite Shoes to even a short stint, as Mary indicated, at a company once headquartered in the Detroit region, FTD Florist. She's best known as CEO of eBay and Hewlett-Packard and for a run for governor in the state of California. She has been a strong advocate for corporate America to engage and support improving education in America. She chairs the National Board for Teach for America, which recruits talented and motivated college students for a minimum of 2-year stints teaching in urban schools. Now, there are more than 900 Teach for America alumni in Michigan. More than 300 TFA fellows have taught in Detroit over the past 5 years, helping to support higher graduation rates and school performance. We get to talk with her today, live, but virtual, about why she has engaged in TFA and her message for Detroit expats and the broader business community. So with that wonderful introduction, Meg, let me tell you, it's just such a pleasure to be with you here today. I'm so glad to have this opportunity.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm delighted to be at Detroit Homecoming. And thank you, Faye, for, I admired your career and I admire the Kellogg Foundation. So thank you for agreeing to be part of the conversation.
Thanks so much. So let's get started. Let's begin with education. So of all the causes, Meg, that you could have championed, I'm interested to hear from you. Why education? Why education as your key priority?
Yeah. Well, about 15, 20 years ago, I said, how could I make a difference to something that would impact America? And there's so many challenges: climate change, racial injustice, income inequality, homelessness, hunger. And I said, but if I could make a small difference to just one thing, and I'm a big believer in focus, could we please do one thing really well as opposed to do many, many things? I thought education was the thing that if we could actually make real progress in K through 12 education, which is my focus, then a lot of those other problems, the barriers to dropping those other problems would go away. And we would be able to make progress on other things as well. So I just thought this is the thing that was the most important thing that we all could focus on. So that's how I decided to focus on education. And then the question is, what do you do in education? I thought about starting our own nonprofit. I thought about a number of different venues, but I did a lot of research on organizations. And I actually concluded that TFA, Teach for America, had made more difference to public education in this country than virtually any other organization. And that Wendy Kopp, the founder of TFA, had really sort of more than any other individual, had really made a big difference. And you characterized it correctly. We recruit students out of great colleges and universities across the country to give us 2 years to teach in an underserved community. Most of these students are not that interested in necessarily being in education, but they want to make an impact for a couple of years. And so we bring them in, we get them certified, and we put them in classrooms, K through 12, in 52 regions around the country. And what is amazing, what happens is they fall in love with their kids, they understand that every child can learn, and they realize the impact they have on those children, and they stay. So 63% of all our now 58,000 alumni are still in education. Another 15% are in other nonprofits or social entrepreneurship ventures. And the thing we didn't quite anticipate is we knew that the teachers in classroom would have a big impact. What we didn't understand was the impact now of these alumni who are school superintendents, who are school principals, who are social entrepreneurs in the education field. We have now 7 Teach for America alumni who are state superintendent of schools, school board members, et cetera. And so now you've got change coming from within because the working with other nonprofits in various communities. I think we've made some real difference over the last 30 years.
That's pretty amazing information. So you took on the responsibility of chairing Teach for America. You came to Detroit in 2019 to help reestablish Teach for America in our community. So I'd be interested to hear more about your interest in reestablishing TFA here in Detroit, your experience, what you learned, what you gleaned from that visit.
Yeah. Well, I have a warm spot in my heart for Detroit, largely because of FTD and the time I spent in Detroit, and obviously now on the General Motors board. But I came to Detroit because Detroit was one of our most important regions, but had fallen on some hard times, and it needed to be relaunched and rebuilt. So I came to visit with the executive director here, Armin Harachian, and we spent a full 2 days really in Detroit. We went to a school in the West Side. We, met with people downtown to understand what the business community was trying to do here. And there's a long history of, trying to improve the public education system in Detroit. And I was struck by a couple things. One was I had a chance to drive through Detroit because I flew out of City Airport. And what it really brought home to me is, when you have communities that are very dependent on one industry and that industry waxes and wanes over time, you have to be really thoughtful about it. And I immediately went to Silicon Valley because in many respects, Detroit was this incredible revolutionary technology in the 30s, 40s, and 50s called the automobile. And, and it built an entire ecosystem and an entire city. When that industry fell on harder times, it had a deleterious effect on Detroit. And I was thinking about Detroit, we need to be thoughtful about what Silicon Valley is going to look like, in 50 years or 100 years. So that was a really sort of that intertwine between social impact and business was reinforced. Secondarily, I was really amazed by the resilience of Detroit's people. It's incredible, just watching, I had a chance to watch the first half hour of this show, just the social entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurs, things that are happening in Detroit now. It's a real testament to Detroit. And we determined that this was a place that Teach for America needed to continue to invest. And then finally, really, when I think about the Detroit region, when I came in 2019, there were just 30 core members in Detroit. And Armin has led a resurgence. There's now 100 core members. You mentioned many, many hundreds of alumni. And we have gone beyond just recruiting out of colleges to recruiting expats, people from Detroit to come back to teach in Detroit. Maybe they've had success in other careers in other parts of the country. They come back to teach in Detroit, 50% of which are Black Americans. The second is that we, huge percentage of STEM teachers we bring back. So it's a slightly different model that we think is uniquely suited to Detroit. So I give Armin and the board here tremendous credit for pioneering something new that we hope will make a big difference to the city of Detroit.
So that's good to hear, Meg. So, you've come to Detroit, you've learned, you have re-engaged, you're moving forward as the board chair of Teach for America, and then the pandemic hits. Yeah. And we hear all about so many stories and data associated with learning loss and mental health issues, and just how this pandemic has really upended our schools, our kids. I'm interested to hear if you can share with us, in light of all of what has happened, what is Teach for America's vision for the future?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you are exactly right. I mean, this pandemic, there has always been inequity in education. The pandemic has shone a light on that in a way that has, made it even more real than it was before the pandemic. I mean, these students in underserved communities, weren't equipped to learn from home. There wasn't the internet access that was required. The digital divide is very real. Think about the equipment and things that students need that they didn't have. And so we have lost, I think, well over a year and a half of learning by some students in some communities. And so now, how we bring those students back, there has been trauma associated around this. There needs to be much more emphasis, in my view, on social and emotional learning and how we can overcome some of that trauma induced sort of fear of learning and fear of what could happen to each and every one of those students. And we have an opportunity, I think, as a country to reinvent now how we have always done education. I think most people know our education system was built for a different time and a different place. It was built in the Industrial Revolution as opposed to the Information Revolution. And so we have, I think, a unique opportunity around the country, community by community, to reimagine how we want education to be and how we re-enfranchise these students and how we catch them up on a year and a half potentially worth of learning loss. So what we're focused on Teach for America is getting teachers, back in the classroom, making sure every child shows back up. Is we're taking care of their social and emotional needs as well as, the reading, writing, and arithmetic, which is important. But if these children are not socially and emotionally grounded, then it's very difficult to learn. So we're sort of broadening our scope a bit as we come back to school after the pandemic. And it is an incredible challenge. And when I talk to my business colleagues around the country, I try to underscore for them, if you're going to invest in your community right now, invest in education. And we can come on to other sources of investment, but this is a time to really try to make up lost ground for many of our children that got left behind even more than they had before due to the pandemic.
So in following your comment with regard to unique opportunities, billions of dollars now are pouring into our communities, to our cities, to our schools. So with regard to that opportunity, what priorities would you set?
Yeah. Well, listen, there's so many needs in so many of our cities, but as given education is my passion, I'd say there's three things that I would really like communities and this, federal government stimulus to focus on. And first is early childhood education. All the research shows that most children's brains are, more than 90% formed by the age of 4. And we don't welcome children into school till they're 5. And so this early childhood education, particularly on the heels of the pandemic, I think is incredibly important. I mean, there's studies that go back 60 years, one of which was done here in Ypsilanti, Michigan, about the importance of early childhood education. So that would, in my view, be number one. Number two is the digital divide. It's still very real. Does every child have internet access? We need to invest in low cost or free broadband access across rural and urban communities that don't have high-speed broadband today. And we need to get them the devices that will allow them to participate. And they may be back in school, but if you don't know how to use a computer, if you're not, digitally native growing up in this world, you will not have the opportunities that you should have. And then finally, we've got to rebuild some of these schools. Some schools are beautiful and have been modernized, but many schools are crumbling around children. And I don't think we can expect them to learn if they don't have the laboratory spaces, the nice classrooms, the gyms, the art rooms, all the things that children need to learn. And this is an opportunity, I think, for cities like Detroit and states like Michigan to get their fair share of this money and make sure it's spent appropriately and fairly among, all children in the state. So I think this is a really big opportunity because there is going to be billions and billions and billions of dollars coming down the pike. And so how do you get a hold of it and how do you deploy it effectively and efficiently, I think is a really important challenge for political leaders.
Well, certainly an important challenge as you think about the importance of public education, in relationship just to simply ensuring that this country has a competitive workforce. Now, you're on corporate boards,
Yep.
General Motors, Procter and Gamble. How do major global companies view public education or the importance of public education in relationship to that competitive workforce?
Yeah, I think up until maybe 10 or 20 years ago, a lot of companies took for granted the quality of public education in this country. And now what they are realizing, every corporate leader is saying, if we are not educating the future workforce of America, we're in deep trouble here. And it will also thwart our efforts towards diversity, equity, inclusion, racial justice, if we don't get this right. And, a lot of workforce education is focused on adults, people who graduate from high school or graduate from college and, maybe in their 30s or 40s. I think what now corporate America is saying is we've got to get this right from K through 12. Think about STEM. Every company now is a technology company, every company. Whether I was interested to hear the woman from Paralee Boyd talk about data and analytics and hair salons, right? In agriculture in the Central Valley in California, this is a data business today. And so getting all of our students, even if you want to be in the arts has a technology component today. Getting every student with a basic knowledge of science and technology and engineering and math so they can, access the world as it is today. Everyone understands this. And so, I think I'm seeing a lot more focus by these big companies in how do we help our youngest students all the way through, our workforce where they need skill adjustment. Everyone understands that it is super important. I would also argue, Faye, that K through 12 education is important for the future of our democracy. If you think about the polarization of this country, if you think about what has happened over the last number of years, I think we've really got to make sure people understand what democracy is, that it's a fragile thing, that there are three branches of government. The basic education of how this works is super important, I think, for the future of our country. And I think that corporate leaders would say that as well. Probably most community leaders would say that as well.
Absolutely. Well, let's shift a little bit to you, Meg, and your amazing success throughout your career. So, as I was checking you out, Princeton and Harvard grad who's credited with being one of the wealthiest self-made women in America. So all that being said, you must have seen throughout your career how many men, women, people, how many folks have a sense of fear of failure. And I would say you've had a couple in that space, the run for governor, launching QB for short form video. It would be really helpful if we heard from such a successful woman. If you could share with us a bit your lessons learned from those experiences.
Well, listen, I think it's actually quite healthy to have a balanced fear of failure. And I actually happen to a balance, not fear of failure, right? You cannot be scared about what could happen. And I happen to have been, maybe it's a personality, maybe it was my mother, who basically, sort of encouraged us to try things. And, if it didn't work, it didn't work. But you don't know until you never hit the ball that you don't try, that you're not up at bat for. And so I always ask myself, and eBay was probably the biggest risk I took in many ways, because I had a great job at Hasbro. You pointed out I was in charge of the preschool division. So I ran Barney, Arthur, Teletubbies, my personal favorite, Mr. Potato Head, and had a great job. I had 2 young children. My husband was a doctor near Boston. And I got this chance to go to a no-name internet company called eBay, 3,000 miles across the country in California. And I said, you know what? We should do this. And I basically said to myself and my husband, we looked at each other and said, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen here? It doesn't work, and I have to go get another job. And we maybe have, move back from California back to Boston where our families were. So sometimes you just have to say, you know what? I'm taking a calculated risk here. And what's the worst thing that can happen, honestly? And then what's the plan B? How do you pick yourself up if you fall down? And so, it was a big risk in many, many ways. I went from making, what most people would consider a significant amount of money as a division president to basically making almost no salary, but took a big equity stake in the company, which, turned out to be the right thing. But, and then when I ran for governor, again, I did understand that, running as a Republican in a Democrat state like California was probably against the odds. But I felt like I had skills that California really needed, and that I could potentially make a big difference here. And people forget, but California was in, a world of hurt in 2010, and had, tremendous budget deficits. Talk about education in California. Interestingly, in 1956, California had the #1 public school system in America. Today it's 48 out of 50 states.
Wow.
So that was, part of it. And so, you just have to, and you always learn. People, always say you learn more from your failures than you do from your successes. Yes, I'm sure that's true. It's sort of a bummer because
Yeah.
it's way more fun to win than it is to lose. But you
No
do learn,
question.
you do learn a lot of things. And I learned a tremendous amount from running for governor that frankly made me a better CEO when I became the CEO of Hewlett Packard. I learned how to communicate to large groups of people. I learned that it's actually not the facts and it's not the figures and it's not the left brain that captivates people and motivates people. It's the stories you tell. And I learned that running for office.
Absolutely. It is the wonderful stories you tell. Meg, I could talk to you all afternoon, and I cannot believe that now we're going to have to end. But let me just say this. You are amazing. You've got a soccer team, you have an esports company, and now you are, and all while you are the board chair of Teach for America. Meg, I just want to let you know how much we appreciate you, how much we appreciate your leadership. And please, please stay in touch. We are so looking forward to hearing from you and really following and appreciating your passion and your focus on education. So
Well,
thank you so much.
Faye. Thank you, Faye. I super appreciate it. Congratulations to Detroit Homecoming. You guys are doing an awesome, awesome job. So go Detroit.
All right, go Detroit.